The Pixel 10 Pro has a zoom capability of up to 100 times, and this is achieved with a main 1x camera and a 5x telephoto. I've not been satisfied with how most other tech channels have covered this, so here are my observations. I've set up this testbed of different items and textures with which to experiment with the shots. Here I've got myself some catnip, I've collected the hair from my favourite females, I've got a Heinz baked beans can, Davros, and this broccoli monstrosity I picked up from a Danish charity shop. So how does the Pixel 10 Pro fare between 1 and 5x zoom? 1x zoom. We've first got to note that the main camera has a 50 megapixel resolution, but all images are saved at 12 megapixels by default. Why? I suspect this is to shrink the file size down whilst keeping enough quality to satisfy 99% of use cases. But it's also because these phones rely heavily on processing to retain as much quality as possible via long exposures and pixel binning and so on. I did take some 50 megapixel shots as well, so we can compare them more directly. If I zoom in on this suspicious looking stain on the ground just here, you can make out the size difference in the pixels. The 12 megapixel one looks sharper, but more pixelated compared with the 50 megapixel smoother, blurrier looking result. Honestly, for comparison's sake, I find this difference in resolution more distracting than it's worth, so I've now stretched the 12 megapixel image up to be 50 megapixels again, just to make comparisons easier to make, even if it's not entirely apples to apples anymore. So how much detail is lost? Well, the 12 megapixel result is slightly less sharp overall. What you lose is the texture of fine patterns like on this carpet here, which the lower resolution makes look a bit over-processed and blobby. But I'd argue that the 12 megapixel version is more consistent with its quality. You can see that the actual high quality 50 megapixel image here retains the carpet texture better, but has a more distracting, over-sharpened look to areas of the image with lines and stuff all over the place, which I think is from it trying to combine multiple images together. I've noticed this a lot with my Pixel 8a, especially when taking pictures of the sea when zoomed in. So in running with the general theme of this video, the compromises that Google makes to its default settings is acceptable for 99% of use cases, and there isn't much lost by dropping to 12 megapixels here. I'm not going to wake up in a panic one night wishing I'd taken this picture at 50 megapixels instead, though I was surprised to see what still appears to be some kind of post-processing done on the 50 megapixel image. I would have thought that, given that it's a pro feature, it would have left it more as a raw, grainy looking image for people who want that kind of thing. I took a low light comparison as well and discovered some other interesting things. I didn't expect the high resolution image to come out darker, but it did, ever so slightly. And this wasn't a one-off. I jumped between the two multiple times, got the same result several times, and even the preview image got brighter every time I selected the lower resolution version instead. So I wonder if maybe they're able to layer more images on top of each other at a lower resolution than they can at a higher one. I didn't bother experimenting with night mode for this video because look at me, I've already gone on several lengthy tangents and haven't even got started on the zoom testing yet. But as you can see, the 12 megapixel version isn't just brighter, it also appears to preserve more details, like this checkerboard pattern on the carpet, which in the 3 years that I've been living here, I haven't actually noticed until now. Here's how it looks when the lights are on. Again, taken with the Pixel 10 Pro. Tell you what, it's handy making a video about phone cameras. Content pretty much makes itself. Ignore how dirty the carpet looks, by the way. I guess I could hoover, but I'll probably just weather it for a few years and then replace the whole thing. But yeah, 12 megapixels, lower in resolution but higher in brightness and fidelity. Look, you can even make out Fluffykins a bit better. But then she is constantly flopping and spinning about, so she could have just been more lit up for this particular instance. But something that's worse with this low-res image is the quality of the grain, and I don't think this is anything to do with the sensor. Instead, it's our old friend, image compression, and it's rearing its ugly head here and blocks the shadow up in the 12 megapixel version, whereas in the 50 megapixel one, through sheer high-resolution brute force, it manages to preserve more of the grain and a better gradient going from light to dark. So look at this, another way that Google is artificially nerfing its cameras with forced 12 megapixel outputs. I also blame this on the ancient JPEG image format that they're using. Okay, maybe Google wants to keep the image sizes smaller, but they could at least have given us the option to save our pictures using the newer and higher quality AVIF image format instead. Google themselves have pushed for it so hard. JPEG XL died for this, and Google's clearly aware of it. They let us record video on this very phone using a similar AV1 format. So if it can use the AV1 video format, then it makes no sense that it doesn't use the AVIF image format. What a stupid company! Although, being a YouTuber, I am at their mercy, so here's an example of a well-lit image that actually benefits greatly from a 50 megapixel mode. Since my kitchen is really well lit, you can see that the higher resolution version makes text readable that's a completely incoherent mess on the scaled down 12 megapixel version. This one visibly reads clear honey, compared with the lower res one that's more like unclear honey. What's stupid is, all 3 tiers of Pixel phones, even their budget A series, has a high resolution 50 megapixel main sensor or thereabouts, but it's only the most expensive Pro model of phone that allows you to capture at that full resolution. Another bit of artificial product separation going on there, and one that could really make a difference to the resulting image quality. Imagine that. You have a phone that has hardware that's capable of taking a good picture, but because Google's software says no, it can't. Ugh. Oh, and just out of interest, these resolutions that I've been talking about are a bit of a lie. I'm not actually comparing 12 against 50, it's more like 9 and 37, because I'm using the 16:9 aspect ratio rather than the whole sensor, because it makes more sense to use a smaller aspect ratio if that fits your screen that you'll be viewing it on, in my opinion. The beauty of lots of megapixels is that it's flexible. A Google Pixel 10 could take a picture worthy of a 50 megapixel resolution, if conditions are bright enough. But the rest of the time, like when you're taking pictures indoors or at night time, the resulting image just isn't good enough to justify that many pixels. And this is where pixel binning comes in, where it condenses several pixels worth of information down to just one. In video games, this would result in anti-aliasing, which I suspect most of you watching this understand as being a good thing, and a way to display more image than the number of pixels you're seeing would suggest. But reality is, believe it or not, slightly different to a video game, though not as much as you might expect, because it still serves the same purpose of cramming more detail into every resulting pixel than it would otherwise have. So by pixel binning a 50 megapixel image down to just 12.5, it quadruples the amount of light hitting every resulting pixel, yielding better low light performance. So why not just use a 12.5 megapixel sensor then? Well, because if conditions are ideal, then it won't have the option of being able to capture a full 50 megapixel result, will it? What cameras really need are larger sensors, which is why there's been so much drama about the standard Pixel 10's cameras, which have been downgraded to smaller sensors than the Pixel 9's were. Google is evidently very confident in their software's ability to process this image up to the same sort of quality. But regardless, if comparing like for like, it should result in worse pictures on the Pixel 10 than on the Pixel 9, especially if the lighting isn't completely perfect. The other benefit of a 50 megapixel sensor is that you can zoom in and claim it's still optical rather than a digital zoom. Now, digital zoom is bad. It's like zooming in on a picture that's already been taken. It doesn't add more detail, it just makes whatever's already there look bigger and blurrier and lower in resolution. So yeah, it's a bad way to zoom. Optical zoom, however, suggests that as it zooms in, it adds more detail to the image. Sort of. For instance, zooming in 2 times halves the horizontal and vertical resolution. On the Pixel 10 Pro, on its 50 megapixel sensor, means that it's still 12.5 megapixels of sensor that's capturing the image. Hey, look at that! That's still more megapixels than the 12 megapixel the image will be saved at. This means that every pixel of the final image is from a different pixel in the camera's sensor, which is a good thing. In theory, it's perfect quality. But in practice, not so much, because like I said, the sensor is so small it doesn't let much light in and it produces a grainy result. You can't see the grain much though, since the Google Pixel, in the script I've just got Pixel and it just confuses things more. The Google Pixel processes the image, gets rid of the grain, and uses some degree of AI trickery to combine a bunch of images, taken in quick succession, then all combined together to improve the final result. But you can tell if I flick between 2x zoom and a 1x zoom taken standing closer to the target, that the standing closer one looks better because it's a 50 megapixel image pixel binned, as opposed to being a 12.5 megapixel one not so pixel binned. It also changes the perspective because that's what happens if you move closer instead of just zooming in from a distance. Sorry, that's physics. Chemistry or something. 2 to 5 times zoom. Where the Pixel 10 Pro could get interesting is beyond 2 times zoom, because that's where we're delving into the realm of digital zoom. Unless we also take an image with the telephoto lens and then superimpose that over the standard one in the middle so it's higher in quality. I mean, it would be lower resolution around the outside of the image, but still better, right? Here I've got a 2, 3, 4, 4.7 and 5 times zoom comparison. For each of these I've had to stand further away every time from what I'm taking and then to painstakingly try to line it all up again. It's harder than it sounds, especially with all of Google's weird stabilization features. So yeah, the telephoto lens on the Pixel only kicks in at 5 times zoom. So if we ignore this last one for a second and focus on the rest, you can see how the quality gets progressively worse as we move from 2 to 3 to 4 to 4.7 times zoom, as it has to increasingly rely on digitally zooming the phone's standard 1x camera as we we go up the zoom levels. I always thought the Pixel was a remarkably reliable shooter, but you can still see variations to the focusing as we jump between these settings. The 3x zoom is interesting because it appears to have sharpened the fur around Davros, like a silhouette around him. But you can see the sheen on the Heinz baked beans cans gets progressively blobbier and blobbier until it leaps back to crystal clear quality again once it switches to the 5x telephoto image. Don't worry, I'll analyse all this for you. And we've learned a few things from this comparison. Firstly, I really need to dust Davros off. He's disgusting. And second, and this is the important bit, I really need to dust Davros off. He's disgusting. And third, and I'm for real this time, the killer feature I hoped would kick in here hasn't. Known as Fusion Zoom, Google has been blabbering about this for several years. So where is it? Is it working but just very subtly? And this is why I found a very technical way of testing this. I put my finger over the telephoto lens. So here's a 4.8x zoom image, with every camera at its disposal to make a good image from. And here's one with my finger over the telephoto lens. Oh look, no difference between them, but maybe it's just because the lighting indoors is bad. So I went outside and waited for the sun to come out. That's why it's taken so long for this video to be made. This is my garden. The key isn't to try and grow stuff. If you care about stuff, it dies, both in the garden and in life itself. Don't get attached. You instead just have to go about killing anything you don't want growing in your garden. That's right, I'm a stone cold killer, bitch! Any dandelion gets torn out, root and stem. Pulling bamboo rhizomes out is my daily workout. You treat me like bindweed and I'll put you in the ground. Not that I put bindweed in the ground. That would be silly. There was. Oh yeah, Pixel's digital zoom. It doesn't make a difference here either. But it can under some situations. And it seems like maybe it's the distance that matters more. This makes sense. Since the two cameras it'll be using aren't exactly in the same spot as each other, there's some parallax as it shifts between the two images taken, which I think can do more harm than good when taking pictures up close. However, at a distance, this shift makes less of a difference, and I discovered situations where it would merge two images together to yield better results, blurring the border between them. It's quite subtle, so I'll draw a box where this shift happens. And it works in this example here as well, where I've deliberately not cleaned my floor for a while to provide plenty of textures for this comparison. So the transition between the normal and telephoto cameras is really well done. Where the transition is in the image depends on how much of a zoom you're using, but given we tend to frame the stuff we want to look at somewhere in the middle of the image, this feature actually works really nicely to bridge the gap between 2 and 5x zoom. Knowing how all this works, I took a few more pictures with it active in the comparison room. And I'll just highlight the transition with my mouse in case you can't see it for yourself. So I imagine this is the secret weapon Google is using to get the edge over its competitors at low zoom levels. I suspect its benefits will be felt even more on the standard Pixel 10 phone. Although its sensors are all inferior, it does have a new 10 megapixel 5x zoom camera as well, and this will greatly help if you're zooming in by more than 5x, but also if you're zooming in by less than 5x, thanks to Sensei Shift or Pixel Shift, this thing. So who knows? Maybe slightly zoomed in pictures with the Pixel 10 will look better than images taken by the Pixel 9, despite the 10 having an inferior sensor. It's just a shame it doesn't kick in most of the time, isn't it? So if you want guaranteed good zoom images, then the age-old wisdom still applies. Make sure you zoom in enough for your telephoto lens to take over. And you can see when this transition occurs because all the colours improve quite a bit and the perspective shifts across a bit, though not much since it's a zoom lens and you're probably snapping something far away, so it's not much of an issue. But here's the problem. I discovered a bit of variance with when the telephoto camera would like to kick in. For instance, if it's zoomed in 5x and you zoom out to 4.8, it will somehow stick to the telephoto lens. But in low light, if you're zooming in, it will try to keep to the main lens until about 8x zoom, before leaping to the telephoto. 5 to 30x zoom. This is a bit boring because it's kind of like between 1 and 5x zoom. Only beyond 5x zoom, there's no chance of sensor fusion working its magic, since there's no lens beyond 5x zoom for it to hope to transition up to. It's on its own, armed with just software trickery to try and hold the image together. But as the arms race for the best zoom heats up, I wouldn't be surprised if future Pixels got a fourth camera that's maybe like 30x zoom. I'm not sure how many real-world situations would benefit from such a zoom, but maybe we'll finally get footage of UFOs that aren't just blobby, incoherent messes. Yeah, right. Since the 5x telephoto is the best the Pixel has, the quality continually degrades until we reach 30x. And then something magical happens. And this is when the Google Pixel's results change their look, because now it's using built-in hardware to upscale the result using AI. This is a huge can of worms in terms of quality and ethical stuff. But honestly, without it, the quality of these images is so bad that using AI can only really improve the result, even if it does have to fabricate a bunch of details. On second thoughts, maybe not. Davros with his eyes open is frankly horrifying, and not how he actually looks. This is how he's meant to look, not like a Professor X you wouldn't want around children. This is a great example of how we can't trust AI to interpret reality. It's how you can't trust it to upscale number plates, because it doesn't have any divine information about the picture it's upscaling that we don't have. It's merely trying to connect together a bunch of details, which means it will get the number plate completely wrong, and will likely just result in a load of squiggles. But this face example is even more interesting, because clearly something has gone very wrong here. I'm not just talking about how the face looks. The very fact that it's been upscaled in the first place goes against everything we've been told so far, because even Google refuses to upscale faces right now, just in case you take a zoomed in picture of somebody you suspect of committing a crime and it superimposes an AI generated face that looks like somebody else, and then that person is wrongly thrown into jail because the AI generated image is used as proof that it was them. Maybe. And if you don't like the AI upscaled result of the zoomed in image, it does also provide a non-upscaled version, because there are a lot of people out there who hate AI. But since Google keeps both images, it means we can easily compare the upscaled against the standard images at these insane zoom levels, which makes my life a lot easier. This here is a slightly creepy example of AI identification working correctly. Aside from some colour correction, you can see it leaves the people in this image completely untouched, whilst transforming the look of everything around them. It's hard to deny the added value of the AI enhanced surfaces, like the sharper looking distant leaves and the wooden materials on the tables and chairs. But let's be real here, even if it is an improvement, it's still far from being an acceptable looking photo. I think we've grown increasingly sensitive to the look of over-processed AI-driven imagery, and despite its best efforts, this just isn't worth the file size it takes up. And don't forget, there are other, more powerful AI upscalers available for PC that do a better job of salvaging images like this. Here I've used Gigapixel to upscale it, and this is a program that isn't afraid of upscaling everything, including faces. This guy in the middle has had a bit of a botched job, but look at this handsome specimen up here. He's been completely transformed, even though it's not how he looks in reality. The woman he's with looks horrifying though. Best keep her unupscaled. Actually, I'm not sure that's any better. See, this is why Google doesn't want to upscale faces. It leads to all these weirdos online analysing strangers who didn't even know they had their pictures taken. But yeah, elsewhere in the image, the background leaves look crystal clear, and it successfully identified all this wooden furniture as being that, and has applied suitable materials to them. It's a really impressive overhaul to the image, if you ask me. Scared? You should be. But as much as people say we should stop developing AI before it's too late, you can't. I've said before, Pandora's box has already been opened. And even if you or a company doesn't want to do the dirty work, somebody else will. I mean, it's all well and good saying that AI shouldn't be used to kill people on the battlefield, but you bet some countries will be happy to do that. And at that point, it's a race to the bottom, else you risk getting wiped out simply to look like you took the moral high ground. AI is coming for us all, our jobs, our hobbies, our lives. No one is safe. But on the plus side, it does make this picture of a tea party look a bit nicer. So there are arguments on both sides. But sticking to the Google software for now, if something is very distant, I'm not sure I'd want to go far beyond 10 or 15 times zoom, which is already enough to zoom into small stuff right across the room you're in, or to get naughty images looking down at nudist beaches. I've got great eyesight, but the Pixel 10 Pro's telephoto lens is better, and it doubles up as a handy telescope for me, which is great if I want to view the prices in Lidl without having to fight my way through the waddling masses to get there. Beyond 15 times zoom, this little image guide pops up in the top right corner of the screen to show you where you're zooming into. This is quite handy, and while the stabilization in this phone is super powerful, there comes a zoom level where it actively works against what you're trying to take images of, and it cancels out all the minor adjustments you try and make to zoom into your cat's eye or whatever. As you can see, the images I'm taking at 100 times zoom are nothing more than a blob of pixels. But enable AI, and look at this! The AI ProRes feature is actually doing something. You're telling me it managed to make this from this? I don't believe it. I think that little 15 times zoom preview image is stored somewhere when you take the image, and it uses that to try and understand the textures and stuff of what you're trying to take a picture of. So here it clearly knows that Fluffykins is fluffy, and it's applying fluffy textures to her face. Indeed, textures like this are the AI zoom's real strength. If I'm honest, 100 times zoom is all that's left of the image anyway. But you can see it does a good job of making the fur look furrier, bushes look bushier, or metal look metaler. These chains are a good example of this, and it's easy to forget just how far away and zoomed in this picture is when viewing this final result. AI is kind of like CGI. When done right, it's invisible. And all this AI processing trickery is done on device, meaning yes, it will probably consume your battery life faster, but it's a freaking AI model. It's doing an AI image upscale in a couple of seconds using just a few watts of power. After all the concerns about AI's power consumption, you can't exactly complain that using it like this is killing the world, can you? But can we improve on this even further? There is a tool the Pixel 10 Pro has in its photo editor, also on device, meaning you can use it offline without having to upload your images to the cloud, and it's called Zoom Enhance. But it doesn't have to be used to crop the image further. You can just get it to enhance the details on an existing image, and any existing image. It doesn't work very well in this particular case, as the image was too blobby and grainy in the first place to be salvageable. But if I apply it to these half-decent 30x zoom images, it does a pretty good job at improving them further. It's a bit hit and miss. It gets some of the details wrong, misses some parts of the image almost entirely, and makes other bits look obviously AI manipulated. But it's a great last resort in order to eke out just that little bit of extra detail when an image is kind of okay, but you really want to shift it from okay into the quite good category. So this is how things are on the Pixel 10 Pro right now, and that's worth a lot. I don't know how much better it'll get on this device. Google doesn't have a great track record for rolling out updates to older models. My Pixel 8a doesn't have this feature at all. But again, if I compare these images to the gigapixel results, you can see that AI upscaling can still improve further. Still not quite perfect, but approaching it. Well, maybe not in this example here, although it was starting with an image where the eyes were already open. I'm sure that if we feed the original image into it, it'll do a much better— oh Jesus! So let's return to trees and plants for now. And I suspect the onboard upscaling will only continue to improve as time goes on, be it on this device or on a future model of Google Pixel phones, because the hardware will only get faster and more efficient, and the upscaling models more streamlined and improved. And the better it gets, the more images that will stand to improve from it, and the better those images will become. So who knows? The sky's the limit. But I bet UFOs will still manage to remain a blobby mess.
And wow. Well, that's a little abstract.
All that is future speculation for now. As it stands, the Pixel 10 Pro is already a remarkably versatile camera device, which I'll show in this one last shot here, where you can see the vast scope of its zooming range, going all the way from its 0.5x zoom ultra wide angle lens all the way to our 100x zoom heavily altered result, and further with the enhanced zoom feature. It looks like ass, but some people like that. From my testing in this video, the number of possibilities the telephoto lens adds to the Pixel 10 Pro's results across a wide range of zoom settings goes quite some way towards justifying what most would deem a pointless upgrade to my old phone. And I think the base Pixel 10's downgraded sensors but added 5x 10 megapixel telephoto lens is a step in the right direction for the camera lineup on the Google Pixel series. And while the prices seem to creep up every generation, at $800 it does still make the base Pixel 10 phone the cheapest telephoto capable phone the company has ever released. But I'm not going to rush out and buy one just to test it. Maybe one of the hundreds of already established phone reviewers on YouTube can actually do their job properly instead of the, oh, I prefer the 10 Pro's focusing to the 9 Pro even though they're both using exactly the same camera hardware, or iPhone has less detail but I prefer the way the sky is a bit bluer, or 5 things that make Pixel better than Samsung. And those fake reviews that come out 3 days before release that just regurgitate the same rumours over and over again, but mask it as like a review of sorts. That's right, the state of the phone reviews market is so dire, I'm going to say that I was forced to make this upgrade to my own phone just so I could review the tech properly. Jesus Christ. So, what do you think of the Google Pixel? Leave your comments below and smash the like button, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a message saying how great I am. Bye.